book, The Faucian Bargain. He's got a bonus chapter of the Faucian Bargain, the Faucian Booster. And I want to talk to him about that. He's got a lot to say about the booster shots and the actual facts. And I mean, if you want to, rely on science and look at the science, let's look at the numbers. Steve Deace in 60 seconds.
Before they implement the passport, I don't think so. No passport where I go. Everywhere I step, I got a passport. Diplomatic immunity like I was a Dipset back in 94. Woo! All the way back then, I'm old enough to remember back then. Back then in the day when everything was the same. Yeah, gotta have a passport to walk into the grocery store, into a restaurant, to watch some movies on my big screen. What? Nah, not right here, not anybody. Everybody wanna be part of the problem, but you really not gonna solve them. What are we doing? Yeah, passport, tell them, leave it left on red. I'ma leave the left on red. Port mean left, the port mean left. On this ship, I'm a starboard kid. Yeah, I'm a starboard. If the right means starboard, that must mean all aboard the Trump train. 2024, we can't do this again. But somebody said the vaccine was from Trump. Number one, first of all, Operation Warp Speed saved them all. It mobilized all of the nurses and doctors in the hospitals getting fired. How you gonna fire them a year later? New York, what you doing? Gonna fire your governor? Put another governor in, do the same thing. We already knew it, but we didn't expect it to be like this. Everybody told me 15 days to slow the spread. I said, what? We on day number one. We still on day number one. Woo. Yeah. Passport. I tell her I left my passport. Left my passport, yeah. I'ma leave the left on red. If port mean left, I'ma be a starboard right here. Yeah, I'ma be a starboard right here, yeah. I'ma be a star cause I'm bored, yeah. I'm a bored star. And you wondering all about everything going on now. And I'm like, I told you not to comply. Yeah, now you're gonna comply. All they had to do was not fund that guy. I don't say the guy's name, I don't say nobody's name. I don't wanna give power to the game, yeah.
Steve Deace, Blaze TV host, Steve Deace Show, author of The Faucian Bargain. Welcome, Steve. How are you?
Good morning, brother. How you been?
I'm good. So, Steve, I'm doing a 5-night special, I think next month, on some investigation that we've been doing. In fact, we had earlier this week, somebody had hacked into our system of one of our producers and was going through all of our confidential files preparing for this show on Dr. Fauci and COVID. And Google couldn't even figure out who was in the Google Docs looking at all of that stuff. We have taken everything and gone offline with all of it while we produce this show. There's a lot of really, really bad things that have been going on with it. Tell me about the bonus chapter, the Faucian Booster.
Well, if you read Faucian Bargain, we left off right when the vaccines were being rolled out, Glenn, and the initial data in real time, particularly for high risk in the elderly with the Alpha variant, the initial data was actually very promising. And so we just figured, let's just end the book here, and then if this becomes an issue of mandates, we can pick up the conversation later. And as it has been the pattern of this entire scamdemic, the less something works, the more they want to mandate it. And so when the vaccines were performing very well, back to normal, take your masks off, everything else. It's the minute that the Delta variant arrived and we began to see the efficacy, particularly from a transmission standpoint, of these therapeutics just completely collapse, that now suddenly they want to impose them on everyone You have the Biden administration overruling the 16-2 vote by the FDA, including 2 resignations in opposition to third boosters. Israel's doing third boosters. Canada just bought 4 years worth of boosters from Pfizer, as a matter of fact. And Glenn, if I had gone online and said in February, March, April, or May that I don't think that these vaccines will hold up in mass against transmission and you're all going to need a third booster by the end of the year, I'd have been suspended, if not banned, from Twitter or Facebook for saying that. And yet here we are. And so that's why we decided we had to do this bonus chapter to try to equip people with Fauci and booster to push back on vaccine mandates right now while the iron is hot.
Okay, let me go through some of your tweets here. According to the WHO's dashboard, the United States had 156% more COVID cases and 148% higher deaths than the third week of September this year compared to 2020. No one was vaccinated in September 2020. 75% of adults have at least had 1 vaccine dosed September 2021. Tell me what this means.
I had a lefty journalist, and I use that in quotation marks, ask me on Twitter how many people that have been banned from YouTube do we quote in Fauci and Booster. These are people I've never even heard of, okay? Although getting banned from YouTube nowadays, frankly, makes me want to find them. But I just use WHO, World Health Organization, and CDC data for the majority of our 40 footnotes in this 22-page chapter. And if you look at the weekly breakouts from the World Health Organization, we had lower natural immunity, no one vaccinated last September. We have up to 80% of people, according to CDC, have some immunity for COVID-19 between natural immunity and vaccinations. 75% have been given at least 1 dose. We have 2/3 of adults that have received both doses. Over 80% of seniors in America have been given both doses. And yet we're sitting here with 156% more cases and 148% more deaths. And this is a week where things should be calmed down. We're on the tail end of the Sunbelt wave. You've got a bit of a lull before we head into the winter wave and the seasonality where I live in the north. And yet you look at a state like Vermont right now, Glenn, it's the most vaccinated state in the union. They have an all-time high for cases right now. Seasonality doesn't even begin for them until this weekend. Maine is also a top 3 vaccinated state. They've got an all-time high for ICU patients right now. Connecticut's reporting, again, out of season, 1/3 of its hospitalizations are fully vaccinated. We haven't even hit the seasonality. That's the number 1 driver of this. The number 1 population driver of COVID all over the world is seasonality. We have not even hit the seasonality in the north, and already in Vermont and Maine and Connecticut, 3 of the most vaccinated states we're having. But you are seeing trend lines that really you ought to be seeing in January. So what in the world is January going to look like?
So what are you suggesting here? That the vaccine makes things worse?
What I'm suggesting is something is not right. They're not telling us something. Something isn't right. This is a bait and switch. The initial vaccine data up against the alpha variants was very, very strong, especially from a therapeutic. And now that it has collapsed on August 5th, on CNN of all places, where truth doesn't even go to die, it doesn't exist, okay? The director of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, went on Wolf Blitzer and admitted that these vaccines no longer stop transmission. So that would seem to indicate then, if the whole argument over masks last year was wear a mask doesn't protect you but somebody else, which that was a lie, but that was the argument, right? Well, that's actually the argument now for these therapeutics. They are a therapeutic like the flu vaccine. You are, if you get involved in this vaccination program, unless they come up with a true vaccine, a true immunization, a Salkian level achievement, understand that you are signing yourself up for an ongoing human experiment of being injected and re-injected with the nanoparticles of this experimental technology that no one invested in prior to 2008, and Moderna was 0 for 9 in bringing products to market until COVID. You're part of this experiment ongoing. Now, you still may decide that given the risk of COVID for you and how the variants seem to be getting worse, you may still decide that that's worth the gamble, but you should be informed of that choice. And if these things, Glenn, do not stymie transmission, which they do not, okay? If they don't stymie transmission, then there is simply no medical or ethical rationale for mandating them on people whatsoever, because this isn't like that if you're any more of a super spreader than someone who is. There was a study that came out from the state of Wisconsin's Department of Health just a week ago. Frankly, I found it courtesy of our CEO, Tyler Carden. He sent it to me. 2 of the largest counties in Wisconsin did a study, and what they found is that the viral load of people who tested positive with COVID vaccinated was actually slightly higher than those who tested positive for COVID unvaccinated. Again, there is no moral or ethical justification for mandating these things before we even get to the constitutional question.
So, Steve, what you're saying is this is not a vaccine. It's a therapeutic at best, and maybe something that once you start, you've got to continue to take.
Like the flu shot, you have to get a new one every year for the new strain, Glenn.
Okay. All right. But there are some things, and we keep, if we're into therapeutics, we keep finding therapeutics that are cheap. Hydroxychloroquine is a very good therapeutic. It's not going to stop it, but it will help you if you have it. It may stop you from getting it. It did me. Once I stopped taking it, that's when I got COVID. And I was taking it. My whole family had COVID. I mean, I was like, oh, I know you got snot all over your face, but kiss me, sweetheart. I wanted to get it out, so I had the natural immunity. But I was taking hydroxychloroquine. That worked. Ivermectin, it works. Those are cheap. And my sister was asking her doctor for hydroxychloroquine in Washington State, and he would not prescribe it. He wouldn't prescribe it. He wouldn't prescribe ivermectin either. These are drugs that have been used for a long, long time.
Glenn, ivermectin won the Nobel Prize in 2015. It is not horse paste. That's a lie. We have a lot of antibiotics that we repurpose for animal usage nowadays. For example, ever had a burger at McDonald's or Burger King? Enjoy your grilled or fried antibiotics, because you had some right there. Okay, that's a complete and total lie. This drug has literally saved and been taken by or saved hundreds of millions of people since 2015. Its manufacturer, Merck, who, by the way, was one of the first companies to jump in on President Trump's Operation Warp Speed and then backed out when they were not confident in their human trial data that they could come up with an mRNA vaccine that was efficacious enough to justify the side effects. So they never came up with one, even though they're arguably the most successful pharma company in the country. All right, they are the creators of ivermectin. They were part of winning a Nobel Prize for this back in 2015. And now, and in fact, in February, they actually put out a paper trying to discredit their own drug from people using it. And now we find out today they signed a massive contract with the feds to get emergency authorization for an oral drug that sounds a heck of a lot like hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. And oh, by the way, though, this one, the government's going to pay them $70 a pill. I could go on GoodRx.com right now, and with a Walgreens coupon, I could get 58 cents per pill ivermectin. If you do the math, that is 11,900% profit per pill, Glenn, per pill for Merck, okay?
How close is it to ivermectin?
Take the game, not the player. How do we know? Here's the thing. All the data that we have gotten so far have all been internal. Let me show you something that just made me laugh out loud last week. Remdesivir, the people at Gilead, which makes Remdesivir, tried to come out with a study to show the government that they are a hugely successful product in stopping people from requiring hospitalization for COVID. Now, back in July, one of the best public university hospitals in the country is an hour down the road from where I live at the University of Iowa. They did a live real-time study of Remdesivir in July, published the results. They found that when it's not causing renal failure, it either doesn't work, and in many cases, it prolongs hospital usage. But here's the kicker, Glenn, here's the kicker. The only way you can get Remdesivir is to actually go to a hospital or healthcare facility and have it administered you, usually by injection there. They self-reported that their drug stops people from having to be hospitalized for COVID, but it's a drug you have to go to the hospital in order to get. And yet, this is a joke. They lie about this stuff all the time, and then the treatment that actually works, it was called Regeneron when they gave it to President Bush or President Trump at this time last year to get him out of the hospital. But now it's known as the monoclonal antibodies. There's several different manufacturers. Ask your audience. If you want to know why I'm not celebrating the Merck announcement today, let me respond to your question with a question. How many commercials since last November, after Regeneron, monoclonal, saved President Trump's life and got him out of the hospital, and then was made available a month later for the country? How many commercials have you seen on TV in the last 10 months for monoclonal antibodies? How many of you even knew they existed until Ron DeSantis started making them portable around the state of Florida? And then after they saved a bunch of lives, and they start doing this in your state of Texas now the Biden administration wants to ration it. It's how many of you even knew what this was? And how many of you have seen it promoted even though it actually works? That's why I'm not celebrating. There's something has smelled rotten in the state of Denmark, Glenn, from day one, from the day that the Imperial College survey came out, March 16th of last year, till now. This thing stinks to high heaven, brother. I promise you.
Thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate the work that you have done on this, and keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, man. God bless.
God bless.